After losing to Nightmare 1-2 last week, we fell down to the loser's bracket, in which my first match was going to be a best of one versus Young Yakov, an up-and-coming Russian Zerg player who has been making a little bit of a splash onto the scene over the past year and a half or so, taking maps of some of the higher level players and even taking series every now and again. Now, the fact that this was a best of one obviously made this a little bit more exciting for me. Always against lower level opponents or people that you're favored against, playing best of ones can be quite tricky. Do you want to play it safe? Do you want to play aggressive? Do you want to play greedy? If you take too many risks and your opponent ends up cheesing you, you might just straight up end up losing the game and being out of the tournament. However, if you play too safe, that might get abused by the underdog. They could play very greedy or go for some greedy opener into a specific all-in that is supposed to hard counter your style. So I often have to make a decision between playing a slightly aggressive build or a very safe build. And this time I kind of did both, I guess, as my plan here was to go for a 4-gate glaive opener. This allows me to put pressure on my opponent, making sure that he doesn't play overly greedy, while at the same time also being safe. I get a lot of units in the early game, can't really die against Link Floods unless I truly mess it up, Bailing Bus not much of an issue, and neither are Roach Ovens. I also went for a hedge block, as we call it. This is where you send your probe across the map after your pylon scout, trying to deny your opponent from expanding towards their natural. I did that with success, as I ended up there in time, and he was forced to take his base over at his third. Now, while I was talking, I've mainly been harassing my opponent's mineral line to make sure that he doesn't get as many minerals as I do and just denying some mining. This isn't a huge deal, but every little bit can have an impact later on in the game, and because your probe needs to stay on your opponent's side of the map anyway, you might as well do something useful with it. If you go home early with your probe, you would get more minerals yourself, but you'd be incapable of seeing how many links your opponent is building, whether he even takes a third base, where his links are moving. Basically, you're denying yourself a lot of very valuable information, and in order to play safe, you need that information. So right now, I saw that all 4 links that he initially built stayed at home, meaning that I'm not so afraid of a link run by in towards my natural. Now, my adept makes its way across the map after a single chrono, as my second adept is also on the way. I pulled some workers out of gas to increase my mineral income, because when you're playing a build like that, you actually don't need that much gas, but you do need a crap ton of minerals. So minerals definitely do have the priority here. After taking out one link, I decide to kind of piss off, and I double shade towards an area. Or at least I should be double shading towards an area. Not quite sure why I'm not doing that quite yet. Okay, here we go. I move in. Ooh, look at this. This is a different move than I thought I did. I walk in and I shade away with both, allowing for basically an aggressive threat on both sides here. So both on the right and the left side of his hatchery. And as he only has one queen in position there, it means he needs to split his links or risk losing some drones or risk losing some links. Throw down the robotics facility after 4 gateways as well and get my third pylon going. This is pretty much the perfect execution of the build, at least as far as I'm aware. Gets you a lot of glaive adepts at a very early timing, while still having pretty decent eco and allowing yourself to tech into either Robobay or a Dark Shrine behind this. My preferred option often is the Robobay, as it's a little bit more secure. If you don't deal damage with Disruptors, they're still useful. If you don't deal damage with Dark Templars, you've basically lost the game. Your opponent's going to get an Overseer and has a pretty decent chance of straight up killing you. So you got to be real darn careful with that. My next weapon is going to be 4 adepts at about 420, as well as a prism that I want to build as fast as possible. And the timing that you usually try to hit with this is to have 16 adepts on the other side of the map at about 5 minutes and 6 or 7 seconds. If you do it perfect, you can even hit a little bit quicker, but as this build order is extremely tight, you need to pull in gas, you need to pull out of gas. Sometimes you might end up mis-microing some of your probes as well. It ends up almost always being at 506, 507. I like moving across the map a little bit earlier with my adepts the moment that the Resonating Glaives upgrade finishes. This forces out links, and links are relatively useless against higher adept numbers. So the more links you can force, the better this attack becomes. So I warp in at 506 indeed, and now I can start thinking about taking a third base. I might want to think about some type of tech as well. as I move in towards my opponent's third base location while simultaneously shading in towards the main base. To end up cancelling this, and I'm gonna get another warp in of pure adepts over here. I can perhaps even pick those up, that is quite nice, and then go into the main base with them. Once again, another shade towards the main base, or in this case towards the natural, while walking towards the third. This basically gives me the maximum amount of pressure on multiple bases. So I'm kind of pressuring the third, I'm kind of pressuring the natural, but I'm making sure that I'm not losing any adepts here whatsoever. It's not that bad if you don't deal damage, as long as you're not losing adepts. The moment you start losing adepts without killing anything of value, that usually is a very bad moment. So I make a little bit of a rotation here, prism over towards this third base, because that's where the roaches are, and then I shade in towards the main, because then he needs to defend there with the links. So basically I force him to rotate defensively as well, except he went for a run by with his links, which means there's absolutely nothing in the main right now. He can't leave the roaches in the third base, so right now 2 bases are under heavy pressure. You end up losing 4 adepts basically for free, because I'm not paying a lot of attention, but he's in a world of trouble as well. I still have this disruptor out, trying to hit here, and I get a pretty decent hit as well. Can warp in 4 more adepts as I try to expand one more time. Now, as he doesn't have any links at home to truly deal with my adepts, he needs to keep chasing with the roaches again and again, and that allows me to put a lot of pressure here on this hatchery. So, although I don't have a third base yet, and it's really late into the game for a third base for me, I'm kind of okay with that, because he also doesn't have a third base anymore, and I'm killing a lot of workers. So I kill the third, kill a bunch of drones, force him off mining once more, kill all the links as they walk in, and behind this I of course have disruptors which can enter the prism. And as I shade once more into the main, he decides to tap on out. The next opponent would be Rom, a French Protoss player who actually, I want to say in Wings of Liberty or at the start of Heart of the Swarm, was a very high level player. I remember him being top 10, maybe even like higher rank in Grandmaster. He was a very good ladder player that never ended up performing all too well in tournaments. At least I couldn't quite find him performing too well. I want to say 6 or 7 years ago, he was extremely good. But I might have taken a small break of a couple of years. Happens to the best. Anyway, PvP here on Gresvan, which is an interesting map. It's one of the most open maps in the entire pool. And it's also a map that can be very difficult to find proxies on. So A, a very open natural, which means stopping all lanes is quite difficult. And B, finding proxies is difficult. So you could say this is one of those maps that is the least reliable for the, well, I guess the favorite. I was looking for the the antonym of underdog, and I was thinking, is upper dog the correct word? I don't think it is, but it definitely should be. So I'm kind of afraid here. And once again, you know, I am the favorite. What do I want to do? Do I want to play a very defensive type of game here? Do I want to play safe, scout every little inch of the map? Or do I want to play a more aggressive game and kind of take the lead in the game? In PvP, it's even scarier than in PvZ because there's no real way to truly play safe. You always need to take some type of gamble, especially if your opponent ends up proxying. You don't entirely know what it is majority of the time, unless you scout the correct location, which is kind of luck-based. So yeah, it's a difficult matchup to be consistent in, especially in a map like this, where there's no ramp leading from your natural downstairs. So I scout no second pylon, and my worst nightmares basically come out. I'm like, uh-oh, this ain't good. Now, there are some things that you can do. You can, for example, go for an Adept or Adept Stalker opener and get a very fast Stargate out as well. That gives you some safety. It is weak against certain Twilight Council builds, but overall it's a very strong build that allows you scouting in the early game with the Adept, scouting with the Oracle once your Stargate is done and you get that one out. I, however, decide to play a slightly different build, go for Stalker into a Twilight Council. And with this, my plan is basically that, hey, if he is proxying a Robo or a Stargate here, I'm going to be in a very solid spot. Why is that? Because if it's a Stargate, he can never expand. If he tries to hold his own natural, he's going to die to my Blink all in. Sadly, all my plans kind of get ruined here by this scout entering my main base. You can see I was pretty upset about it as well. I should always block my opponent from not scouting tech in my main, as this was absolutely terrible. I'm also not finding his tech, and now I'm seeing that it's just a pylon. This is probably the worst case scenario for me. A, he sees exactly what I'm doing, and B, he didn't really build any tech that I could hard counter, like a Robo or a Stargate. In those situations, I just get a lot of units, and once my blink finishes, I can push him back. Both of us invested in early tech, and I'm kind of in an okay spot. You know, I get some control. I'm not necessarily always ahead, but I'm always in a spot where I can deal damage. And on top of that, he also gets this little adept in, which is super frustrating. So this entire game is honestly falling apart, and this is pretty much the worst case scenario when you are playing against a player that is worse than you. Just everything simply going wrong. I have worse mining right now. He's killing 3-4 workers, and there's very little that I can do about it because he didn't have a recall ready either. I'm trying my absolute best to micro. I'm losing a crap ton of mining time. I think he ended up killing 4 or 5 workers here. He had a faster Nexus. He can have a hard counter against my blink build because he scouted it. I'm technically dead at this point. I really don't think there's all that much I can do. My plan is to move across the map while building a lot of workers and then pray. Like that is literally my plan right now. I hope that he makes a major error. I could throw down a Dark Shrine as well, but the moment your Twilight Council gets scouted, a very common response is a robotics facility. So if he has that, and you know, he'll have an Immortal, and then afterwards he'll have an Observer. No problem. And I see the Immortal here, so I'm like, okay. At this point, getting a Dark Shrine is completely unrealistic for me. I can't do that anymore. So I decide to just chrono boost my probes, throw in Stalkers whenever I can, and see if I can trade out any amount of units. And another thing that I want to do is I kind of want to scare him. So I try to attack his Immortal over here, you know, pop the shield, pretend like I'm going to go kill him. Hopefully he's not building workers the entire way through, and maybe he'll add 1, 2, 3 extra batteries as well. Although, if he looks at this situation, honestly, he doesn't really need to do that, because he has 2 Immortals out, he has a higher Stalker count than I do. Like, all he needs to do at this point is not give any units away for free, and he should be winning. But as we can see, he's not actually building any workers at this point on his natural, so I'm kind of happy with that. I'm also afraid of his blink finishing sometime soon, because he just has so much money. I'm like, well, if he actually ends up, you know, getting blink and blinking on top of my Stalkers here, that would be absolutely terrible. I get a battery because I become afraid for something like a, maybe like an Immortal push, where he'll attack me with 2, 3, 4 Immortals, a bunch of sentries. I start adding my own sentries, because no matter what happens this game, at some point I'm probably going to need force fields. And my plan right now is completely kind of focused on dealing damage with 2 adepts while he moves out. I saw that he's getting a lot of Immortals. I saw that he cut a couple of workers. So I'm like, all right, the one way I'm winning this game is by defending an all-in while simultaneously dealing a lot of damage. That is probably the best case scenario for me. I also want to kind of bait out an attack out of my opponent by taking a fast third base. Because if I take a third base, it might trigger a response, and then my adepts can deal some damage. I can cancel my third base and maybe play from there. If all goes wrong, another thing I can do is go into a Robo Bay, start getting Disruptors out. So I see his move out, and yeah, I just add another battery, try to chrono out an Immortal as well, and I see him moving forward. I'm just absolutely in a world of trouble here. That much should be clear. He doesn't have gas though on his natural, so I now know that I'm ahead economically. I get a couple of good force fields in as I pop one more shield here on an Immortal. I'm very patient as well with my super battery, as I took out 4 or 5 workers right now. Here comes the super battery as his Immortals are falling further and further down, and I'm almost starting to believe at this point. I'm like, okay, I have 1 Immortal out. I actually have quite a few Stalkers. I have decent production. Maybe if I can clear the Prism, I can buy enough time to get 1 or 2 extra Immortals. Or if he goes back home, I'm also kind of okay with that. Throw down a Forge here behind all of this. I'm like, okay, no need for me to get too aggressive at this point. Okay, there's absolutely no need for that. I can just get a third base. If he wants to all in again, I can cancel that third base, defend on 2 bases. I have 4 gateways. I'm getting an Immortal count, and I'm getting a Forge. So I have a lot of things actually going for me, despite this game being quite bad. So my eyes actually widen a little bit there, being like, ooh, that was real nice. Because I saw that there was no Nexus there. So I want to scout the line base as well, whether he's taken the, I guess that's the 8 o'clock or the 9 o'clock. Oops. Just checking what the vision of that observer actually is. I start my forge upgrades as well, and I probably should be adding a battery right about now. I think that would probably be a good call. I see him standing at home. So in PvP, a concept that is quite important is feeling ahead. So even if you're not ahead, if you feel that you're ahead or your opponent feels that they're behind, they will almost never take map control. So after seeing his positioning of his units and his observer spot, I believe that he believes that he's behind. And what I can do is I can kind of abuse that. Take back a little bit of map control here. I can maybe clear that observer for free. I can maybe even force a cancel on a base. That is sometimes a possibility. Oh, did spot some DTs over here. That's kind of frustrating because I didn't quite have observers ready. It's actually extremely frustrating. Same time, he's also attacking with a bunch of stalkers. I warped in some stalkers. I have one observer and an immortal over here. And I'm not actually losing all that many workers. Once again, a sad little development here in this game. Finally, I was getting back into it, and then this happened. Don't take too much damage, but I do lose a lot of mining time, which is always going to be super frustrating, of course. No matter what happens, losing a lot of mining time just sucks. It's an absolute fact. My immortal count is high enough at this point that I feel secure that I can't die against a high stalker count of my opponent. My opponent will need zealots, perhaps even archons to deal with my current army. Just checking with the observer, making sure that there's no prism here. I see no prism, so I can send it somewhere else. I have good vision on the bottom side with the pylon. On the minimap, we actually see our opponent move forward right now as well. It's kind of a wild move, and some people might even consider it to be an incorrect move. No, don't want to lose my own observers. Of course, DTs could still be around. Luckily, he's not really targeting my observer. I wasn't targeting his either. Good control on my immortal. I very easily win this fight, and from here on out, I don't really think there's all that much he can do anymore. There is a DT still slashing away at my third base. Oh, I warped the stalker right in front of him, which he could insta-kill apparently. Very, very frustrating. I try to chase some of these stalkers back home. I do have a fort base on the way already, where I'm gonna get a cannon, and I start my next attack upgrade as well. This observer was just chilling in the dark space. Nice move, Kevin. Love to see it. Absolutely loving it. I think the move out, if I actually go for this move out, if I attack with this, is probably a mistake. I have very solid right now eco. I'm getting more gateways. I have a fort base that's on the way, and I'm getting +2. So right now there's a significant amount of resources that is being invested in the future. And that means that I don't want to do something right now. I could try and keep map control with these stalkers while simultaneously making sure he can't easily get a fort base. But my timing, where I basically peak with unit production, is in about a minute from now. Practically when my +2 also finishes. So if I want to go for a timing, that is going to be a kind of a natural timing that I want to hit. I check whether my opponent has a fort base, and I see that the answer to that is no. Can deny the probe over there as well, which gives me even less incentive to move out, to be quite honest. I want some map vision, making sure I can't be attacked. And I keep my zealot on his top base. And the moment I'll see his army go there, I want to do something with my own blink stalkers. Whether that's going to maybe kill something, or blink in, kill a couple of workers, or maybe take out a free DT and clear a battery. Just to scare my opponent, it's always a nice thing. Here I end up killing a DT, a battery, a zealot, and an observer. It's a very good trade, and on top of that, it probably also scares my opponent. It's going to be afraid of moving out right now, which is good, because I already have a base down. So the longer I can stall him from moving out, the better it becomes for me. Sadly, I don't actually have a battery here at my third base. But if I did, then this would be the easiest hold and easiest base trade of my life. Now I'm not entirely sure if I want to do this. I'm just keeping my stalkers behind him to clear the prism. And without a prism, I don't think he can attack. So I decide to actually go for this base trade move with my stalkers. I think this works out well. Maybe I should have cleared the zealots rather than trying to go for that pylon. I can one-shot zealots, which is super comfortable. And yeah, just kind of move around. I get an okay trade there. I see him trying to go in, and that was an absolutely terrible surround, but it almost worked. I see him coming in for a surround as well from the bottom side, so I'm like, okay, I'll just blink up here, cheeky little recall, and at the same time I can probably move on the map with my main army. It just doesn't have that much left anymore. I have +2, I can get +3, my Immortals are coming in, nice surround on the Archons, GG gets called, and I win the next best of 1, allowing me to go into the next round. And in that next round, I got to play against Mana, Liquid Mana, my old teammate, and someone whom I have a long history against, as we can see here on the Aligalug page. Legitimately hundreds of games played, loads of series played as well. Sometimes he won in large chunks, other times I won a couple of in a row. So always a difficult opponent for me to play against. Although as of late I had been performing better against him than he had been performing against me. So yeah, a little bit of an advantage, maybe a mental edge at least. I don't actually think I'm much better than he is. I think we're fairly similar level, but the last 7-8 series I definitely had been, I had the upper hand, that's for sure. So once again, Grassfan, the exact same map as against Rom. And once again, I'm opening up with a double gate opener. Like I said, there's not very many people that on a map like Grassfan don't want to open up with a double gate opener. Max packs perhaps would consider opening up with like a 1 gate expand, but it's really wild to do on a map like this. Like you need to be extremely aware of everything that can happen. And I'm not as good with the 1 gate expand as Max packs is, for example. His knowledge of the defensive theory with that build, it's absolutely crazy. So what I did here is I scouted my opponent. I was like, hey mate, what do you actually have? Are you, sending out a scout yourself, or what's kicking off? So I just proxy a pylon myself without really having any plans of proxying myself. I just want to scout around, see if I can find his pylon while having a hidden pylon on the map. The beauty of having a hidden pylon on the map is that your opponent might believe that you're actually proxying, so they kind of overreact, and often they respond with a Stargate, which is exactly what I was aiming for. So I'm looking for his proxy. He's probably looking for my proxy at the same time, although now I see him just going in. I'm like, hey, that's really weird. If you go in this early, most of the time it's going to be a fake proxy pylon. So the same thing that I was doing, but here I actually see on the minimap what he is doing. And I think that is a robotics facility. No, it's a gateway. Ooh, very interesting. So I'm not entirely sure how this scenario is supposed to play out, if I'm honest. Like this is a scenario, up until this point, I have never played before, where I play 3-gate blink and my opponent plays 3-gate. Let's just list the advantages and the disadvantages of each build. So my advantage is that I'm going to have blink. My disadvantage is that I lose map control. My opponent will have 5 stalkers when I have 4. So that means that I'm going to lose my pylon pretty much for free, and there's very little I can do about that. On top of that, my opponent will be, should be capable of realizing that I need to be defensive and that I can't expand, which forces me into building a battery up on my high ground, while at the same time it allows my opponent to build 1 or 2 sentries, contain me, and then throw down a nexus of his own. So I'm actually in a pretty bad spot here. At least I feel like this is a bad spot. Even to this point, I have no clue whether I'm winning or losing. I don't know if this is... I think it's very dependent on how each player plays, basically. But it's always quite annoying if you get thrown a situation your way in which you don't actually know what the correct response is, how you are supposed to play it, how your opponent is supposed to play it, like what his range of possibilities is. In my mind, the correct calls out of him here are to go up to 5 stalkers, throw down a nexus, build 2 sentries, and then get a robotics facility. So you can get defensive immortals, you can get a hallucination scout before blink finishes in case it's blink, and you warp in like 2 stalkers at home. So here I'm scouting with my probe, and I see that his nexus is almost done. So I'm like, okay, this looks darn bad. Like, I'm not happy with this at all. I actually don't want to show how many stalkers I have, and I also don't want him to know that I have blink, because my plan pretty much relies on me catching his low ground units here and trying to kill as many as I can, and then go for a 4-gate counterattack. Like, if I don't kill him straight up, I think I'm pretty much dead here, because I have no way of transitioning out of this, and he definitely does. Oh, that was a terrible blink back. Now I just decide to blink in forward, start targeting down stalker by stalker. A little bit of split fire here out of me. Not the greatest control that I could have gone for, as he does decide to piss off here. I'm like, okay, he did get forced to recall. He lost quite something. I want to make sure that I'm not being annoyed by any adepts. And I also want to limit his production. So I'm just going to kill this pylon, but leave the gateway be. I don't actually care about the gateway. I care about the speed of my attack here. It's really important that I hit as soon as I can. I kind of regret not full walling my base at home right now. I think I should have done that. Like, there's very little chance of me ever having to expand off of this, and I still have a probe on the map anyway. He gets a single battery out, and I see how little stalkers he has. I'm like, wait, I can just one-shot. Even if he activates a super battery right now, it doesn't really matter, because I can one-shot every stalker, so a battery will never actually do anything useful. I build a robotics facility in my wall, because I'm kind of afraid of TTs. Then I see that he got his own immortal, I cancel it, and I win the game within 6 minutes. So a very solid win here for me. I'm quite happy with it. Next opponent is Dimaga, as he managed to take out Uthermal in the previous match. That means another best of one, this time on Ancient Cistern. And Dimaga is a player that I think is smart and realistic often. If he is an underdog, or if he believes you have some type of weakness, he's going to make sure to abuse it. You know, he's not the type of guy that plays an honorable game if there's a way to win with a less honorable game. I remember one particular final between him and, I want to say, Marine King in 2012, in which he, back then it was a 6-pool, not a 12-pool, in which he 6-pooled, I think, 5 times in a row, because Marine King would always play CC first in Terran versus Zerg. And Dimaga believed that the 6-pool was a good counter to that. So, yeah, he is someone that does what he needs to do in order to win. Let's have a look at this game, though. So I decided to not go for a block on my opponent's hatchery, but instead just went for a gateway scout. It's a little bit safer in case of like a 12 pool or any type of early pool, really. It's really nice to have that slightly later scout. You have a little bit more money, and you see immediately what's going on. Sometimes if you're doing a pylon scout and you try to block your opponent's natural, your opponent can fake trying to take that natural with a drone while actually 12 pooling. So you're busy blocking it, your opponent fakes taking a third or something, and then you scout it very late and the defense can be quite hard. So if you are not feeling super secure for whatever reason, or you feel like you're a lot better than your opponent, I always recommend Gateway Scout. It's very solid, very secure. If you don't quite understand how to do certain things, I also think it's a good option to go for. Second pylon in my main base. And this looks, my second pylon placement makes it look like I'm going to play a Glaive Adept build order, but I actually am going to play a little bit of Oracle over here. Once again, Oracle, very solid type of unit. Make sure that you keep complete control of the game. Does allow for your opponent to sometimes get a little bit further ahead if you're not aggressive enough with your Oracles, if you don't get enough damage in, if you don't force out enough links with your Adept. It can be bad, but I always feel like it's such a good unit, and specifically on Ancient Cistern, I think Oracle openers are simply superior to Glaive Adept openers. It's quite a large map, and yeah, to me personally, that's just how it feels. I think a lot of Protoss players would agree with me. I think a lot of Zerg players would also agree with me. Now, having the Zergs agree with you doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. I have a strong belief that Zerg players just tend to lie to me to get me to play bad things. So I don't trust any Zerg player ever. I'm scouting whether there's a third base here. I see no third base at the triangle location, so I go to the line, make sure that it's there, and I scout how many drones there are. I'm like, okay, Dimaga, this looks very normal. I see that he put down a creep tumor as well, and I opened up with a Stalker after 2 Adepts, which means that my Oracle is going to be a bit delayed, but I can deny scouting, and I have 2 Adepts across the map, which can potentially deal some damage. I see that his links are a bit out of position, so I decide to go in here. I'm never entirely sure about this, though. Sometimes it feels like it's good. I mean, I force away a lot of drones, and I kill 2 workers, so he loses a crap ton of mining time, and I keep 1 Adept alive as well, which actually is quite good. I feel forced to build another Adept to stay safe. And my first Oracle, I kind of want to keep it at home because I lost an Adept. So, sure, I killed drones, but it feels unsafe to move out with the Oracle here. I actually do believe that I might be doing it. Now I'm just poking forward, just checking if there's any links here. Because if he built like 4 more links after the initial 8, he shows up with 12 links. I only have a single Adept and life sucks. This is a terrible position of my pylon, by the way. It's not quite, Adept not quite properly tucked in there, which is fairly frustrating. I'm going to add 2 more gases as well. and then go into Forge and Twilight. Now, I have been struggling with follow-ups off of Oracle openers in general. I think it is difficult sometimes for Protoss to realize what we have to do or what we feel like we have to do. I think Blink is good. I think Charge has some value as well, but I'm still honestly not entirely sure as to what the best type of response is, you know? And especially if you don't get a lot of damage, Blink can feel like it doesn't really do anything for you. Because with Blink you want to be out on the map, right? But if you don't deal damage with Oracles, often feels like Zerg players just have infinite drones anyway. Here I really miss micro my Oracles. Pretty sure I just shouted some obscenities in Dutch there. I look very upset. I can't recall what I said. I wish my microphone wasn't muted. Next time I won't mute my microphone. I do like the clickety-clack of the keyboard. And you know, the occasional swear word when I'm playing a tournament is definitely nice to have in there. I think I played Charge here, right? Did look like I started. Yeah, I'm also starting to build some Zealots already. Throw down the Templar Archives at the same time. I love this build order. I really, really enjoy this. Quick gases coming in. I see his fourth isn't that fast. It also isn't super late, of course, by any stretch of the imagination. Bunch of larvae there, so I'm becoming somewhat suspicious. Like, hey, what's going on? Like, why is there no gases? Why did you have 10 larvae? And in those cases, I usually prefer adding more gateways rather than getting a really fast fort base. And I also have a robotics facility here, which can build a prism, which is super nice. Allows me to put on some real pressure, of course, which I think is generally a good thing to do. I think I'm actually afraid here at this point. I'm not entirely sure what is happening. Did I just see that correct in my main base? Yeah. Wasn't actually doing anything properly. Go for a Robo Bay. This is a very safe way of playing. Basically saying, hey, I don't want to die against anything stupid. So I try to push my Archons away to get faster to gateways. I'm playing this uber safe. Yes, there's a little bit of aggression in here, but this is mainly safe. Like, I don't want to lose to a Roach Lane. I don't want to lose to this. I don't want to lose to that. It's basically all it is. And well, so far I'm not losing quite yet, but oh no, don't quite get that building up, which is frustrating. It doesn't have a lot of roaches here. Means that perhaps I can actually deal some damage. There's a couple of links here in this base as well. Stasis Ward definitely did help out. Can't afford to lose this Prism. Do feel like I'm trading okay, but I think I honestly, if you're playing against pure Queenling and you're going for a Charge Lot Archon attack, there's no Banelings, no Roaches. I think theoretically you're supposed to win the game straight up there. Like I don't think there should be a world in which you don't straight up win. And right now I don't have a fort base yet. I invested in a Robo Bay, which is practically useless against Ling Bane. So I'm not super feeling my position currently. You know, my fort base is difficult to get up. I'm getting some cannons here. One of my oracles might even die here. Check the worker count. It's always scary to check worker count, you know? It's a moment of truth often. It's like if there were 35 workers here, I would be super sad. I probably would have lost the game. And luckily that's not the case yet. I actually can clear some of these workers. I'm pretty happy with that. Try and fight some of these queens as well. While the links come in to defend. Add a couple of gateways, 4 more gates. It's always a good number to add, 4 more. I like that. No matter how many you already have, I think 4 more is always good. So you get another one here. I think I want to get a proper wall, but this doesn't quite look like a proper wall. It looks a lot like an improper wall though, so... Yeah, I mean, Banelings can definitely just go in there. This looks like absolutely nothing. I don't want to build Disruptors because I haven't seen any Roaches yet. You really only want to get Disruptors against Roaches or Hydras. If it's pure Ling Bane, I think Storm is just much, much superior. This is a good run by once again. I'm not getting outplayed here, to be honest. I do get the Archons into the main base. Can't afford to lose this, but I do lose it, which means that 8 minutes, 35 seconds into the game, I still don't have a fort base, which is absolutely terrible. I move in with my 2 Archons. Don't forget, this is still a best of 1, so if I lose this game, I'm completely out of the tournament, and there's really nothing I can do. It would be a huge upset for the Dutch, losing 2 top players to the Maga. Ooh, almost got run by it, so I take my forward fort base. Do get a couple of kills here, and I see low gas count, which does, you know, it feels good for me to see a low gas count, because it makes me believe that he doesn't actually have that many have that much tech. He can't get an insane Baneling count. He can't be into Lurkers or into freaking Brute Lords at some point in the near future, you know? So that does feel good. I start adding Disruptors because I saw Roaches, I saw Hydras. And I'm kind of surprised by that, especially Hydras and Roach. One of the two would make some sense, but both of them is just extremely rare. Got some nice supply blocks as well in the past few minutes, so that definitely was a nice thing. Here I want to clear some of these creep tumors while simultaneously trying to do something aggressive here with my Prism. Way too deep on creep. I don't enjoy that at all. 5th base is going to get denied here. I send some Zealots in forward. And I keep some Disruptors with my main army. Oh, another run by. He's really keen on those run bys, isn't he? It's quite good as well. But 4 base versus 4 base is almost always good for the toss. I think at this point I should almost be thinking of transitioning at some point into Sky Toss. Because the next step most likely is going to be Lurker from here, right? I'm seeing a lot of Hydras. So I think, honestly, getting any type of carriers would be fantastic. There's a lot of Roaches in there as well. It's like a huge army. It does send in a run by where my Disruptor's not here. Prism goes into the main. I lose both of my Disruptors like a complete idiot. And that means he now has a lot of units that are good against Archon Immortal and would have sucked against Disruptors, but I don't have any Disruptors here. And for whatever reason, that doesn't discourage me from moving in right now. I feel like I have the God-given right to win this game at this point. It could be further from the truth, honestly. I mean, I go in with some nice harassment, but at the same time, Roach Hydra Bane is taking out a lot of my Archons, and if I had a heart rate monitor at this point in my life, I think it would be gone to the 140s, 150s. This Disruptor shot is a game changer. It gets about 12, 13 supply of units. Otherwise, I think this base is absolute toast. Even now, it's still pretty close to being toast. Salad Warpin is helping me out. The good thing for me is that I have extremely good gas income. And you can see that, like I'm floating a crap ton of gas. I still have my Prism alive, which means he is forced to keeping units at home at all times. His 5th base is potentially in danger as well. Which is also a good thing for me. And I'm still producing Disruptors, and I have 2 Disruptors as well, which is absolutely fabulous. This base is super important. If he can't expand to a 5th, then I don't really have anything to worry about in this game. If he can eventually set this up, that would be fairly frustrating. But the fact that the Prism is in between the 2 bases means that he needs to have units on both sides and allows me to move a little bit more freely on the map, basically. I think this is way too free. This is way too aggressive, what I'm doing here. I have no vision of where his army is. So I don't think this makes a whole lot of sense. I'm glad that I go back home. I think it's a very good call, as my Prism almost gets sniped. I just said that that's really the only thing kind of keeping me into this game. Obviously isn't an ideal scenario here. Start my next upgrade as well. And I still have a lot of gas in the bank. I think adding Storm at this point would have been a good call. Not adding Storm would have been a bad call. I don't think I add Storm. So, not making a lot of good calls so far this game. Getting a couple more Zealots, a couple more Archons. This is kind of the lazy toss approach, you know, rather than getting another type of splash. You just keep adding in Archons because it's really easy to micro. But at the same time, it also isn't quite as strong as Storm. Like a second type of splash is so good against Zerg, honest to God. That's a big Disruptor diff, but he does end up hitting there. I have one more coming in, and this fight does look fairly good. Does come in with some of these Banelings, but my supply still feels okay-ish at least, and I continue moving forward. He has had a 5th base for a while, but I'm also getting a 5th base. I guess the main issue that I'm having right now is that I don't have any run-by really on the map, and I also see him getting a 6th. What is that unit moving across? Oh, that's 2 Zealots. Yeah, it's not a huge run-by. I think I should have added a 2nd Robo at this point as well, now that I look at it. It's like I'm just continuously pumping from 1 Robo, but I want more robotics facility units. I don't want more Zealots and Archons. I want 5 more Immortals and 3 more Disruptors. That's what's important to me. I don't give a crap about having 10 more Zealots here. Is he warping in Banes? Okay, for a second I thought it was Lurker, but it was Banes. This is a fairly good fight again for me. Try to go for 1 more run by. No Banelings there, for whatever reason. And this Disruptor shot is going to clear a lot more of these Roaches and Hydras. And here I do believe that I kind of end up winning the game. I mean, it doesn't have that much left over. I have a run by on the top side as well that I see happening. Need to be careful because I don't have a lot of reinforcements here. This run by definitely dealt some big damage. If I can get 1 more big Warping in here of Zealots and and Archons and all of that jazz. You get so much tanking added on. Your disruptors, they basically reset, so I can send out more purification novas. I've been floating a lot of money this entire time. Doesn't really matter. Just managed to win. GG, good luck next gets called. I win the game, and I'm allowed to go into the next round. And those next rounds will be shown next week here on the channel as well. The final week of the $2,500 tournament called the Big Brain Basilisk Bout number 25 anniversary edition. See you then.